The Season 2 Infinimist Shadowblight Necromancer is going to be crazy. Not only are we dodging every nerf that is being thrown at us, but we are also getting a huge multiplier on our main source of damage. The main idea for this build is going to scale our shadow damage and our keystone passive Shadowblight to trigger over and over by converting our Bone Storm to shadow damage and then buffing that shadow damage while also reducing the cooldown on Bone Storm tremendously by picking up a lot of Blood Orbs. So this playstyle is going to be close range and it's going to be extremely tanky. Let's go to the skill tree and actually have a look how we are going to achieve this. We, funnily enough, don't even play a spender, basically no core skill at all, because it's just Infinimist. We want to have Reap to be able to have damage reduction, a little bit more attack speed, basically being able to form a corpse or every time that we are going into a new pull to get our stuff going, basically. Then we just want to have the Hued Flesh to have as many corpses as possible, which is also going to be crazy as you see during the video. Then we want our Blood Mist, which is basically one of the bread and butter skills of the build. And then we want to have the Enhanced Blood Mist, which is basically useless, but we want to get to Ghastly Blood Mist, which is going to give us corpses every 1 second when we are blood misting. Then, really important, we want to have our Corpse Explosion maxed out, and we will also increase the ranks of Corpse Explosion, but we get to the gear later during the video. Then we want to have our Corpse Explosion radius increased, and we want to convert the Corpse Explosion damage to darkness, which is going to be extremely important to trigger our keystone passive and our main source of damage over and over and over again. Because of the nature of how the dot works, it is going to basically proc the Shadowblight keystone passive every time the damage ticks. That's going to be crazy. Now, we also want to invest 1 point in Grim Harvest to get to Fuel to Death, which is going to basically give us 9% increased damage for 6 seconds, basically constantly. Then we want to have Death's Embrace because we are going to be playing close range and right inside the middle of the mobs. And our Decrepify, which is also going to help us with the lucky hit to reduce our Bone Storm. Basically, everything will be decrepified and all our shadow dot damage on the ground as well as our Reap are getting the chance to trigger the apparent Decrepify, further reducing the cooldown of Bone Storm. And then, because everything is going to be cursed, we also take the Amplify damage here to get 12% more. Then comes the juicy part right here. We want to have 3 Necrotic Carapace just to have some source of Fortify and actually be more tanky while standing in a lot of mobs. Obviously, we want to have Corpse Tendrils. We want to invest in Enhanced Corpse Tendrils. And this is basically the bread and butter of the utility in the game. In the build, we want to have Blighted Corpse Tendrils, which is going to pull in everything on the Corpse Tendrils and has a 35% chance to drop a Blood Orb. This is going to become extremely important in the aspect section. So remember this one, we will get there soon. Then we want to have all of the points in the Shadow Cluster that has been buffed. Not only are we taking Reaper's Pursuit to be way faster, we also take Gloom and will be further enhancing the Gloom with the Amulet, as we see later on. Then we also take Terror to get more damage and get another lucky hit, which is this time around going to stun the enemies. Then next up in the ultimate category, obviously we take Bone Storm. We get all of the stuff, more damage reduction, more crit chance, which is not really going to be important since our dots cannot crit. But it is not really important. The dots are going to be scaling crazy. And then we take Standalone because we sacrifice all our minions, and Memento Mori, that is also going to further amplify our sacrifice bonuses by 60%, which is going to be huge. And last but not least, we're going to take Shadowblight, which is always going to trigger every 10th time that an enemy receives shadow damage from us or our minions. Since we don't have any minions, that is not going to be important, but every 10th time we deal shadow damage, they are taking damage from the Shadowblight. And that is going to be crazy. And that one is also going to be scaling. As we can see, this last sentence has been added during the Season 2 patch, and now Shadowblight's damage is increased by 100% of our shadow damage over time bonus. So this is going to have an external multiplier, which are going to be really hard to get during Season 2, and this build basically gets it for free. And not only is the multiplier going to scale our damage, but the source of the multiplier, so our shadow damage, is already scaling our damage. So you kind of double dip here with shadow damage over time, and then you multiply by the amount of your shadow damage over time. So you see multiplier upon multiplier, that is going to be crazy. You will have 1 point left over, so I will just choose Gruesome Mending to get a little bit more healing, but you can take whatever you want. Maybe you will find a more suitable place for this 1 point right here. When it comes to Paragon boards, I suggest you check out the link in the description below to get to this build. I'm not going to go over everything here, just very quick. We are playing the Exhumation glyph in the starting board, then we play the Wither board right here with the Imbiber glyph, then we play the Flesh Eater board with the Territorial glyph, and we then play the Scent of Death board with the Darkness glyph, and last but not least, Blood Begets Blood with the Scourge glyph. The thing here is it's really important to change it up a little bit. You can follow the pathing here completely. The only thing you need to change is the placement of the Scourge glyph, because as you can see here, it is increasing our shadow damage over time. Now, if you remember, this is a direct multiplier of our main source of damage. So you obviously want to have this one as early as possible. This one scales up with willpower, so whenever you are reaching this glyph node right here and you already have some access to willpower, then you can slot it in here instantly and profit from the double dipping of the damage. The damage is going to skyrocket. Then you will basically take it to the next willpower node and you will leave it here on the second board until you get to the point where you can actually slot it in to the last board right here. Leveling the glyphs in this build is very easy. You start out by leveling Scourge, then go into Darkness next, Exhumation after that, Territorial and Imbiber. This time you level all of these to level 15 and then start at the top again to level 21. Aspects and stats on gear is very easy. We start out with Explosive Mist on our helm or anywhere else on an utility socket, which is going to help us trigger Blood Mist almost all of the time because it's reducing the cooldown of Blood Mist. Then we want to have a little bit safety on the chest with Disobedience. Next up, we want to have our Bone Storm be converted to shadow damage. We do this by applying Ultimate Shadow. And next up, we want to have Aspect of Shielding Storm. This is going to be Aspect of Might while you are looking for the Aspect of Shielding Storm. Both of them are very defensive options. Aspect of Shielding Storm going to be crazy. You will have a full barrier all of the time. But until you find this, you just take Might here. Then Ghostwalker Aspect. Every class is going to run this for the complete duration of Season 2 because of an interaction with Metamorphosis, which is going to give us Unstoppable basically all of the time. And while we are unstoppable, we are going to get 25% increased movement speed from Ghostwalker. So you basically always have movement speed right here. Then we are playing a one-hander and a focus. So this time we want the Aspect of Decay on our weapon right here. And the Blighted Aspect to get those 50% passive increase from the amulet on the Blighted Aspect. That is going to be again increasing our main source of damage by quite a lot. Next up, we want Blood-Soaked Aspect on the ring to deal shadow damage now also with our Blood Mist. And Blood Mist is not going to give us a penalty on our movement speed anymore. And here comes the little combo to help us reduce the cooldown of Bone Storm. Namely, we want to have Fast Blood Aspect, which is thankfully a Codex Aspect, which is going to decrease the cooldown of our ultimate skill by 1 or 1.5 seconds, depending on how you roll it, every time you pick up a Blood Orb. And Aspect of the Embalmer, which is going to go on a defensive slot, is going to have a 20 to 30% chance to spawn a Blood Orb every time we consume a corpse. And we are basically non-stop consuming corpses, basically littering the whole screen full of blood orbs. You almost don't even have to go and collect these. You're basically just running and you're auto-collecting the blood orbs because there's just so many on the screen, basically helping you even further, not only with the lucky hit from Decrepify, but also giving you a flat damage reduction almost all of the time on your Bone Storm. So it's going to be really easy to have this up all of the time, basically damaging everything around you. It's nuts. It's really one of the coolest builds I could imagine for Season 2. For the uniques, this build is actually going crazy whenever you are going to find X-Files Corroded Signet. As you can see here, another lucky hit effect, which is going to allow our damage over time effects to have a 50% chance to erupt, dealing 5 to 6 damage of the same type to nearby enemies. So this damage is going to be shadow because we're dealing shadow damage. And as you can see here, every damage instance of our shadow damage has a chance to trigger this and then is going to explode in an AoE, as I think, around our target that is afflicted with our shadow damage. Now, 5 to 6 doesn't seem like much, but every multiplier for shadow damage is going to affect this damage right here, which is going to be crazy whenever you are lucky hitting. And that is not going to be as big of a problem because Bone Storm, Corpse Explosion have very high lucky hit chances on them and therefore are going to have an easy time to trigger this unique ring. The uniques are not mandatory. That's the really good thing. They're basically going to be a win more condition, especially the ring. But Howl from Below on your glove slot is going to have a nice quality of life feature because your Corpse Explosion is now going to home in on the enemies, then exploding and then leaving the dot right under them. The bad part about this is though that you will be having a lot of problems with your aspects. You can't really get rid of aspect of Ultimate Shadow, and you also cannot get rid of aspect of Decay, and you also cannot get rid of Blood-Soaked Aspect. Maybe Blood-Soaked Aspect is the one that you could get rid of the easiest for the Howl of Below, so you would just switch these two and then equip the Howl from Below. But I will definitely give an update on how I am going to decide on which one to swap out whenever we are going to get Howl from Below on this build. What's also really important here is maybe we don't even use it in the first place, but again, I will update on this. Necro class mechanic is very easy here because we are going to sacrifice the Reaper Skeletal Warriors for more shadow damage, then the Skeletal Cold Mages to increase our vulnerable damage, which is not really that big of a deal, but we're still going to do this because, as we see in the next section, everything is going to be perma-vulnerable anyway, and then we can sacrifice our Blood Golem to get 10% more max life. Or if you like to have that, you could also go for more attack speed here. For the seasonal mechanic, it's going to be Crazy Combo City right here. As you can see, a Cursed Touch is another lucky hit chance, which we have not a big problem of triggering because our Corpse Explosion has 40% lucky hit chance and Bone Storm has another 40% lucky hit chance. This one allows us to give a Vampiric Curse on apply a Vampiric Curse to everyone, and is going to turn the Blood Mist in a trigger for the Accursed Souls, which you can store 8 of, which are going to do damage whenever you are going to cast your Blood Mist. While everything is going to be Vampiric Cursed, you're going to make them vulnerable with the Vampiric Curse with the Prey on the Weak power, and you're also going to deal 16% increased damage to them, which is going to be nice, but again, it's not as strong as in Season 1 anymore. This is basically just an additive multiplier now, but nonetheless, free damage. And then we go with Anticipation, which is going to reduce our Bone Storm cooldown, and as you can see here, this is going to be crazy. Your ultimate skills gain 12% increased damage for each nearby enemy affected by your damage over time effects, which is basically everyone. So if you have 100 enemies on your screen, you can do the math, it's going to be crazy. Next up, Flowing Veins, which is going to directly increase damage over time for everyone who has a Vampiric Curse or is moving, which is basically, again, every enemy on our screen is either moving or affected by the Vampiric Curse, because the A Cursed Touch is also spreading the stuff out, and a Vampiric Power that basically every build is going to run Metamorphosis. It's going to be crazy, especially with the combo with Ghostwalker. It's just insane. You will just zoom across the screen all of the time. For the rotation, it's going to be very easy. You're going to start out with reaping the enemies that you see, basically dropping an instant corpse on the ground, which is going to be used for your corpse tendrils to pull in everything, and then you start corpse exploding and using your Bone Storm. Then you can just keep spamming Corpse Explosion, or if you're a little bit too lazy, you can just activate Blood Mist, and Blood Mist is going to keep Corpse exploding for you. I am really curious how this build is going to perform. This is easily already an S tier build. I am unsure how high the ceiling is gonna be, but this definitely looks like the new Bone Spear thing that basically shouldn't be in the game, because we're getting so many shadow damage over time multipliers, and also we got the Shadowblight added multiplier that was not there before. All the enemy health has gotten reduced, and basically the damage of Shadowblight hasn't been nerfed, it has rather been buffed, so you can see mob health goes down, Shadowblight damage up, Necro wins.